November 14, 1957, Apalachin, New York, rural estate, 12:47 p.m. New York State Police Sergeant Edgar Croswell sat in his patrol car, watching a mansion on a hilltop. Something was wrong. Too many cars. Expensive cars. Cadillacs, Lincolns, Chryslers. License plates from all over. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, California, Florida. At a rural estate owned by a soda distributor, Croswell called for backup. Set up a roadblock at the bottom of the driveway. At 1:15 p.m. they moved in. The moment police appeared, chaos erupted. Men in suits ran, through the woods, through fields. 58 men were caught, arrested, identified. Their names read like a who's who of organized crime. Vito Genovese, Carlo Gambino, Joseph Profaci, Sam Giancana, Santo Trafficante Jr., Russell Bufalino, Joe Bonanno. The biggest gathering of mafia bosses in American history, caught red-handed, undeniable proof that organized crime existed. The next morning, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover held a press conference. The FBI has no evidence of a national crime syndicate. Yesterday's incident in New York appears to be a social gathering that local police disrupted. The Bureau sees no indication of organized criminal activity. Reporters stared in disbelief. Sir, 58 known criminals from across America were meeting at. The Bureau's position is clear. There is no mafia, no national crime syndicate. Local police may investigate local crimes. The FBI handles federal matters, one reporter pressed. So the FBI won't investigate. Hoover's face hardened. There is nothing to investigate. That is final. For 30 years, J. Edgar Hoover denied the mafia existed, while mob families controlled entire cities. While organized crime earned billions, while murders happened daily, Hoover said, "There is no mafia." Why? Everyone knew it was a lie. Police knew. Prosecutors knew. The public knew. This is the story of why the most powerful law enforcement official in America refused to fight organized crime, why he gave the mob a free pass for 3 decades, and what the mafia had on him that kept him silent. 1930s, 1950s. Hoover says the mafia doesn't exist. It started in the 1930s. Prohibition had just ended. Organized crime families had made fortunes bootlegging. Now they were expanding into gambling, prostitution, labor unions, legitimate businesses. Police departments across America knew. District attorneys knew. Everyone knew, except officially the FBI. In 1935, a Senate committee investigating organized crime invited Hoover to testify. Senator, Director Hoover, what is the Bureau doing to combat the Italian organized crime syndicates? Hoover, there are no Italian organized crime syndicates. There are isolated criminal gangs, yes, but no national organized crime syndicates. There are isolated criminal gangs, yes, but no national organization. The New York Police Department has documented, local police handle local crimes. The FBI does not see evidence of national criminal conspiracy. This became Hoover's position, repeated for decades. 1940. Congressional testimony. No evidence of organized crime. 1950 Senate Crime Committee. The mafia is a myth. 1955 Senate investigation. Organized crime is exaggerated by media and local police. Meanwhile, the mafia was operating openly. 5 families controlled New York. Outfits ran Chicago. Organizations dominated Philadelphia, Boston, Detroit, Las Vegas, Miami. Mob bosses weren't hiding. They owned restaurants, attended public events. Police knew who they were, but FBI wouldn't touch them. Former NYPD detective Ralph Salerno later testified, "We'd arrest mob guys, federal crimes, extortion, racketeering. We'd contact FBI for help. They'd say not our jurisdiction." It was insane. U.S. Attorney Robert Kennedy, before he became Attorney General, tried working with FBI on mob cases in the 1950s. Hoover refused cooperation. Kennedy wrote in his notes, "Hoover acts like the mafia doesn't exist. Either he's incompetent or he's compromised. I don't think he's incompetent." The question haunted law enforcement. Why won't Hoover investigate the mob? 3 theories emerged, all of them damning. Year West 25. Meyer Lansky was the most powerful mob boss in America. He didn't run a family, he was above families. The accountant, the money man, the genius who connected organized crime with legitimate business. Lansky controlled Las Vegas gambling, Cuban casinos, offshore banking. He was worth hundreds of millions, and according to multiple sources, Lansky had photographs of J. Edgar Hoover. The story emerged from mob associates years later.
In the 1950s, Lansky's people followed Hoover, photographed him in compromising situations. Situation 1. Hoover at Del Mar Racetrack in California, betting on horses, placing bets through mob-connected bookies. This was illegal. Federal employees couldn't gamble, certainly not through organized crime operations. Situation 2. Hoover in Las Vegas, at mob-owned casinos, gambling, staying in suites provided by the mob. Photos showed Hoover and Clyde Tolson, his deputy and constant companion, being entertained by mob hosts. Situation 3. More personal photographs. Hoover and Tolson in situations suggesting their relationship was more than professional. In the 1950s, homosexuality was illegal in most states. If Hoover was gay, his career was over, his power gone. Susan Berman, daughter of mob associate David Berman, later wrote, "My father told me Meyer Lansky had pictures of Hoover, pictures that would destroy him. That's why Hoover left the mob alone." Former FBI agent William Turner, the rumor inside the bureau was that the mob had something on Hoover, something that made him back off. Mob attorney Frank Regano later testified, "Trafficante told me, we own Hoover, he knows we own him. That's why he pretends we don't exist." The deal was simple. The mob wouldn't release the photographs, and Hoover wouldn't investigate the mob. Mutually assured destruction. Mob FBI detente. 19. The photographs existed because Hoover had a vulnerability. He loved gambling. This wasn't just casual betting. Hoover was addicted. Every summer, Hoover and Clyde Tolson took vacations, always to places with racetracks or casinos. Del Mar, Saratoga, Miami, Las Vegas. FBI paid for these trips, officially work-related conferences, but witnesses saw Hoover gambling extensively. Hotel staff in Las Vegas testified, Hoover and Tolson came every year, stayed in suites provided by the hotels, mob-owned hotels. They gambled every night. Pit bosses at Del Mar confirmed, Hoover bet on horses, through bookies connected to Mickey Cohen, Los Angeles mob boss. The amounts were substantial. Records suggest Hoover lost, and sometimes won, tens of thousands of dollars annually. Where was this money coming from? FBI director's salary wasn't that high. Investigation later revealed, Clint Murchison, a Texas oil billionaire with mob connections, was bankrolling Hoover's gambling, paying his debts, covering his losses. Why? Murchison wanted FBI protection for his business dealings, some of which were illegal. Former IRS investigator later testified, Murchison was using Hoover, giving him money to gamble. In exchange, FBI looked the other way on Murchison's tax fraud, so Hoover was compromised twice. The mob had photos of him gambling. He was accepting money from mob-connected businessmen. If either became public, Hoover was finished. That's why he denied the Mafia existed, because investigating them would mean they'd release what they had on him.
1961. Bobby Kennedy forces Hoover's hand. When John F. Kennedy became president in 1961, he appointed his brother Robert as Attorney General. Bobby Kennedy's top priority, destroy the Mafia. He'd been investigating organized crime since the 1950s. He knew the mob controlled unions, businesses, politicians, and he knew Hoover was protecting them. One of Kennedy's first acts, he called Hoover to his office. "Director, I want FBI full cooperation on organized crime investigations. Mr. Attorney General, the Bureau already investigates. Don't lie to me, you've spent 30 years pretending the mob doesn't exist. That ends now." Hoover's face went red. "You cannot order me. I'm your boss. The president is your boss, and we're ordering you. Investigate organized crime, or we'll find someone who will." This was the confrontation Hoover feared. For 3 decades, he'd been untouchable. Now the Kennedys were threatening him. Hoover left Kennedy's office furious and frightened. He had files on the Kennedys, their affairs, their mob connections through their father. But the Kennedys had something too. They could fire him, and if they did, everything would unravel. Hoover made a decision. He'd investigate the mob, superficially, enough to satisfy Kennedy, but not enough to actually damage organized crime, and he'd protect himself by making sure the Kennedys needed him more than he needed them. Under pressure from Bobby Kennedy, FBI launched organized crime investigations, finally, but the investigations were sabotaged from within. Tactic 1. Agents assigned to mob cases were inexperienced. Senior agents stayed on communist investigations, Hoover's priority. Tactic 2. Wiretaps were placed, but transcripts were edited before reaching prosecutors. Anything that might implicate Hoover's gambling was removed. Tactic 3. FBI investigated mob bosses Hoover had personal relationships with, but never charged them. Example: Frank Costello, New York mob boss. Hoover and Costello were seen together at racetracks. FBI opened investigation on Costello. An investigation went nowhere. Bobby Kennedy was furious. "Hoover's sabotaging us." JFK's response: "I can't fire him. He has files on us. Just push as hard as you can." Meanwhile, the mob was watching. They saw Hoover resisting Kennedy. They saw FBI investigations failing. And they made a calculation. Maybe Hoover wasn't reliable anymore. Maybe the deal was falling apart. In 1962, according to later mob testimony, Lansky considered releasing the Hoover photographs to destroy him before Kennedy could. But another mob boss argued, "If we expose Hoover, Kennedy puts someone worse in charge, someone who'll actually investigate us. Better to let Hoover stay. He's still protecting us more than anyone else would." The mob decided, keep the photographs, keep the leverage, but prepare for the possibility that Hoover's protection wouldn't last forever. November 26, 1963, JFK dies. Mob investigation dies with him. When President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Bobby Kennedy's power evaporated. Lyndon Johnson became president. Johnson didn't care about the mob. He cared about Vietnam, about civil rights legislation, about his own political survival. Organized crime investigations were quietly scaled back. Hoover, who'd been under pressure from the Kennedys for 2 years, was suddenly free again. And mob bosses breathed easier. Years later, mob attorney Frank Regano would make a stunning claim. "Santo Trafficante told me, we killed Kennedy. We had to. He was going to destroy us." Multiple mob associates made similar claims, that the mob was involved in JFK's assassination, that they'd hired Lee Harvey Oswald, or at least facilitated the hit. FBI investigated these claims, found nothing, concluded Oswald acted alone, but critics noted, Hoover had every reason to not find mob involvement, because discovering it would mean admitting, rather so, the mob was powerful enough to kill a president. FBI had failed to stop them. Hoover's 30 years of denial had allowed the mob to grow this powerful. Better to say, lone gunman. No conspiracy. Case closed. Whether the mob killed Kennedy or not, the result was the same. Bobby Kennedy's crusade against organized crime ended, and Hoover went back to pretending the Mafia barely existed. 1972. Hoover dies. The truth starts emerging. J. Edgar Hoover died in 19... With him died his protection of the mob. New FBI leadership finally treated organized crime seriously. Investigations accelerated. RICO statutes were deployed. By the 1980s, mob families were being prosecuted successfully. But damage was done. For 30 years from 1940s to 1970s, the mob had operated with minimal FBI interference. Why? Because Hoover was compromised. By gambling. By photographs. By relationships with mob-connected businessmen. As evidence emerged in the 1970s, the full picture became clear. The photographs existed. Multiple mob associates confirmed Meyer Lansky had them. Hoover gambled extensively. Clint Murchison bankrolled Hoover. IRS documents confirmed payments. Hoover and Tolson's relationship. FBI agents testified their relationship appeared romantic. Living together. Vacationing together. Constant companions. In 1950s America, any one of these would have ended Hoover's career. Together. Catastrophic. So Hoover made a deal with the devil. He'd pretend the Mafia didn't exist, and they'd pretend they didn't have proof of his secrets. Former FBI agent Neil Welch later wrote, Hoover let the mob flourish for decades because investigating them would have exposed him. He chose his career over his duty, and America paid the price. The cost. What Hoover's denial cost America. By refusing to investigate organized crime from 1930s, 1960s, Hoover allowed the mob to build gambling empires in Las Vegas and Cuba, traffic drugs on massive scale, murder hundreds, maybe thousands with impunity. The violence of the mob wars in 1960s, 70s was partly Hoover's fault. Because FBI hadn't disrupted the families when they were smaller, they'd grown powerful enough to fight wars over territory. When FBI finally did investigate in 1970s, 80s, they found organized crime had penetrated crime trade, construction industry, trucking industry, waste management, food distribution, entertainment industry, political campaigns. All of this grew while Hoover said, there is no mafia. The man who claimed to protect America spent 30 years protecting the mob, not because he was on their payroll,
But because they had leverage over him, the blackmailer was being blackmailed, and organized crime thrived because of it.